We're live, and I'm bored on a Friday night, so let's get it. Why not? Welcome into Juck on Bucks. Thought I could sneak this one by you guys. Didn't think anybody'd catch me, but I see you there. Thanks, fellas. We got some college football to talk about, and we got the court settlement thing. We got to talk about it. I know it's boring, but it affects us in a lot of ways. So we're going to talk about that. We got some Buckeye recruiting news. Coach Locke on the trail, absolutely embarrassing Tony Alford's efforts. So we're going to hit on that. Coach Locke is attacking the trail kind of like he attacks the gym. I mean, the dude has been everywhere. Pretty impressive. I ran across a poll the other day that I am in the vast minority on, and I kind of want to see where you guys stand on this because I just can't see how anybody could disagree with me on this. So we're going to go over that too. It's not rare that I'm in a minority on polls, and sometimes I just tell myself I think a little deeper than some people to make myself feel better, but we'll see. We'll find out what the real Buck fans think about it. And then maybe we'll open it up here, but let's get to the potential settlement first and get it out of the way because I know it's not too exciting to talk about, and I promise I'll be fast, but it's coming up here fast in like 25 or 26. And Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports has basically become the premier guy to fill us in on the playoff, NCAA cases. He's the guy that they leak all the information to. I don't know why they picked him, but it's cool because I like him. He does a podcast with Dan Wetzel and Pat Forty, and Pat Forty's horrendous, but Dan Wetzel I used to love until recently with NIL and the portal. He's been so far out of bounds, and he also really stood up for Michigan during their nonsense, but he's from Michigan. So he's not from Michigan, but he lives there. He's lived there for years. But anyway, we're going to start here with the case. So if you're not familiar, the easiest way to break it down is the NCAA and the Power 5 conferences are accused of preventing conferences from sharing broadcasting revenue with players and barring NIL prior to 2021. And it's very clear that they're going to lose this case. So it's in their best interest to settle. Now, the judge has given them 40 days to settle and basically figure out how they're going to pay athletes moving forward and how they're going to back pay athletes that are owed damages. Now, the statute of limitations on those damages owed to past athletes is only 4 years. So we're not talking about paying guys back into the 80s or 60s. So how are they going to pay these guys? They got a 10-year settlement, and it's important to note right off the rip that as I read these numbers off, what they're agreeing here to is essentially a salary cap. This is the amount of money that you're going to be allowed to pay players across sports. So it's being referred to as a permissive model, which means voluntary. So we've got a voluntary model here, salary cap style, and the cap is $300 million per school over 10 years, $30 million a year annually, which is that 30 million figure is tied into 20% of most schools' annual budget, annual revenue for the athletic department. So it's $17 to $22 million of that revenue they are going to distribute to the athletes, plus $2 million held back for damages and $10 million for additional scholarship cost related to expansion of sport-specific rosters. The $30 million price tag is 20% of the average athletic budget. Of course, that's only 8% of the Ohio State athletic budget. So that already puts Ohio State in a bit of a power position here and makes it much less of a hit to be able to, handle that easily. So already a good position for the Buckeyes. But the expansion of scholarship limits, the example that they cite in here is that in baseball, the NCAA permits 11.7 scholarships across a baseball roster of 32 total players. And under the new model, schools can now choose to provide a scholarship for each roster position. So they can essentially choose to pay for those if they want to or not if they don't. But it makes the schools that have more money, it gives them an advantage because now they have more scholarships than everybody else. So those 100 additional scholarships, which some schools are estimating they're going to use, is going to cost them $10 million, and that's where that $10 million figure comes from. So $10 million for the scholarships, 17 to 22 for the salary cap, and $2 million for the damages. The NCAA is also going to be on the hook for a massive payment, and they're going to be responsible for paying $3 billion in back damages over 10 years. They're going to pay this by taking away the money that they would normally distribute to the schools from the NCAA tournament, which they bring in about $700 million every March Madness. So that's the simplest way I could say it all. And it's probably still confusing. Just my delivery, not your comprehension. But what does it mean for us, right? That's all I really care about. So not every school president or chancellor is in agreement on this, but the approval seems likely as they only are going to need a simple majority. And the Big Ten apparently is the most aligned and ready to settle this. Sounds like all the Big Ten presidents are saying, all right, let's go. And of course they would be, because this is very advantageous to the Big Ten and to the SEC. There's a lot of schools in the ACC and in the Big 12 who aren't going to be able to reach that salary cap, so they won't be able to spend as much, so they want the salary cap to be lower. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen. It looks like this is kind of the number that's going to go through here. So obviously, from a player standpoint, if you're an elite player, you're probably not thinking about going to the Big 12 or the ACC anyway, except for Florida State, Clemson, and Miami in the ACC. And those schools are going to be able to max out that salary cap, so that's really not going to affect that. But if you're a recruit who might be a bit of a long shot to be a starter in the Big 10 or the SEC, but you could be a starter in the Big 12, well, right now you would say maybe I'll go to the Big 12 and start. But in this new system, I think a lot of these types of guys are going to roll the dice with the Big 10 or SEC school and kind of bet on themselves because they're going to go and get $20,000 a year instead of going to the Big 12 school and getting nothing. So, I mean, at 18 years old, $20,000 a year, whatever it shakes out to be, is going to be a lot. So I think this is going to make the Big 10 and the SEC rosters a bit deeper with talent and maybe take a bit away from the Big 12 schools and a lot of the ACC schools. So, in a way, I don't like this for college football as a whole, as the rich are kind of getting richer. But I really don't like that we're still trying to pretend like there's a level playing field between the ACC and the Big 12 and the Big 10 and the SEC. It's too far gone. It's never coming back. Once Texas and Oklahoma left, and Florida State and Clemson made it clear that they are going to leave, and we all know that's going to happen at some point, it pretty much makes the ACC and the Big 12 a second tier. We all know it. And pretending that it's not is just silly. Same thing, pretending the G5 belongs in the playoff is just silly. So for our Buckeyes, we're positioned great here. Obviously, the number one athletic department in the country. So it's clear in the article that you don't have to spend the $17 to $22 million. That's the limit. But what's not clear is, how do you get to spend the 17 to 22 million? Title IX is definitely going to play a part in this, and we don't know exactly what that means yet. But if you have to pay everybody, like Charlie Baker's plan, remember the NCAA president, Charlie Baker, came out with kind of a similar plan, but you paid all the student athletes the same. Girls, boys, every sport. So if this 17 to $22 million is going to be applied like that, then we got to figure Ohio State President Ted Carter and AD Ross Bjork are about to axe quite a few sports. And it's not just Ohio State with 30-some sports that's going to be axing sports. I think a lot of schools, like schools with 18 sports, are even going to be cutting down. And I think that sucks. I'm kind of the mind that if a sport can't pay for itself, like how bad can you feel for it? I mean, you really can't. They should be self-sustaining, but they just can't be. And I think sports are great for a lot of the athletes that play them. They're great for their families. And I love college athletics in general. But you're kind of cooked here if you can't fund it yourself. And it's kind of going to be a pay-for-play model, or maybe a lot more intramurals. I don't know. But I really think if they, if this has to be spread out amongst all sports evenly or all players evenly, then we're going to see a lot of schools axe a lot of sports, particularly Ohio State, which has so many of them. And we've talked about this for a while. Heck, I thought Ted Carter and Ross Bjork were kind of moving in that direction anyway before this even came about. But the Buckeyes are going to be in great position, just like in 2024 when we have emerged as, a top tier program in NIL. They're going to be a great position whichever way they go with this. So as far as our purposes, we're sitting pretty here. But important to note, we still don't know how the NIL is going to fit in with this. It's been floated. For starters, the schools and the institutions want the NIL to come in-house. Virginia passed that law that schools can now pay them directly, and that's flying around the country. It'll be everywhere fast. And they want to be able to bring that in-house. They don't want to deal with the third-party NIL outfits anymore, though they would still be active. The only way you can get them out, and this is being floated, that schools could purchase the athletes' NIL rights. So then the outside NIL would be totally cut off. And that's certainly what the schools want, and they'll try. But you have to convince the students to sell those, or it has to be collectively bargained. And they're a whole long ways away from that happening. So NIL, as of now, it's going to stand how it is. But Ohio State's going to emerge as the top dog no matter what way this goes. NIL in-house, NIL out-house. Any way we slice it, our position is strengthened through this thing here. There's no doubt about it. But I look at this stuff through the prism of a college football fan and not just an Ohio State fan. Not necessarily what's always best for us, but really, if I thought that it was any kind of even playing field with the ACC and the Big 12, I wouldn't like this because I feel the gap getting bigger, but I just think it's too far gone. So in my opinion, it's just about the way it should be. But anyway, that's my take on that. Curious to hear what you guys think about it. If you care, I don't know. I know it's really boring stuff, but you got to read it, man. You know, you got to read it when you sit behind a microphone and talk about it. My buddy Garrison is from the Scarlet and Blue podcast. That's the one Michigan guy, one Ohio State guy podcast that I went on a little while ago. I know I played a clip. Some of you guys probably saw it. And the Michigan folks got really mad at me for simply saying 100% factual information that really upset them. Garrison put a poll out, and I want to go over the poll because I think it's a pretty awesome question. When I was on that podcast, I said that Ward Manuel, their athletic director, is an absolute fool because either he was lied to by all of Harbaugh's coaches who said they were going to stay, and then he went with more, thinking that he was going to keep the band together, or he really thought it was a good idea to hire Moore, who on the market would have gotten a G5 job, to come to Michigan as a rookie head coach and hire a brand new staff. Either way, he's a fool. And that's just a fact. I told you I only bring facts, not an opinion. The second thing is I said, and they were really upset about this, how illogical it was for them to revere Connor Stallions, the guy who brought down all this stuff on them, even though they say he did nothing for them. Like, so which is it? Just totally illogical. But that's not the point. The point is this poll question. So Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer each had some disappointing losses. And Garrett's poll question was, which one hurts you more as a Buckeye fan? So Tressel losing the back-to-back national championship games against Florida and LSU, or Meyer from 2015 to 2018 screwing up possible back-to-back, losing to MSU, Iowa, Purdue, and the Clemson blanking. So a lot of Urban stuff in there. You got the back-to-back, screwing that up, losing to MSU. Then you got Iowa, Purdue, then the Clemson blanking. A whole lot of games. And most people chose that one. For me, this wasn't close. What hurt me, what was harder for me, it was the Florida and LSU game. And it's not close at all. To lose to Florida like that, being the massive favorites that we were, we all thought we would steamroll them. Maybe not steamroll. I mean, I thought we would steamroll them. I think a lot of people did. Some people thought it would be closer, but most of us thought we would win. We were really nice favorites. But that game really was, in my opinion, the most consequential game in the last 30 years of football because it changed the entire college football world's perspective of the SEC being this dominant monster conference. And it really kind of shook me to my core as to, you know, that team, our team was so good. And to get just creamed like that, and then the next year to go up, kind of get lucky with all those upsets at the end of the 07 season and go against LSU, who was not as good as that Florida team, and lose again. I think that game was a lot closer than the final scoreboard, and we had a lot of self-inflicted wounds. But it looked like we got mollywopped again to the outsider who wasn't really paying attention And those two games just rocked me to my core as a fan. It's something that stayed with me for forever, really. There are times when we go up against an SEC team, even Georgia a couple years ago, where there is still this little bit of fear in the back of my head that we might get steamrolled, like we might just be totally outclassed. And, it's just utterly humiliating when that happens. So it's just this fear that I have. I don't have that fear. Obviously, I have fear that we can lose games. Sometimes we play a big out-of-conference game early on in the season, and I think, we could lose this game. Or a game against Michigan, we could lose this game. But it's only when we play a team like Georgia a couple years ago, a really good SEC team, that I have that fear in the back of my head that we might get totally creamed. And I don't want it to be there. It was never there before, the Florida or the LSU game, the Florida game in particular. And it just feels to me like those games were just kind of rocked me to my core. As far as the urban games, the Purdue and the Iowa, those were just infuriating. I mean, so was MSU. Obviously, three teams we never should have even been anywhere close to them in the games. The MSU one, ridiculous, not running Zeke, particularly in a bad weather game. That was really just unbelievable how talented that team was. But that team didn't really have it going on all year anyway. The other two, just stupid slip-ups, but they were infuriating, but they didn't hurt like that. They didn't hurt like those Trestle games to me. It wasn't really close at all. So the results of that poll were only 40% felt like I feel, and 60% felt that those urban games were much harder for them to deal with. And I think it's a really good question. And, that's a pretty even split, I'd say. Maybe I'm just saying that because I'm on the low end and I want to feel like I'm not so out on a limb here. I don't know. But the coaching staff has hit the road and they've been out traveling. There's a couple new prospects in the fold, but they are looking for a transfer at safety because right now there's only 6 safeties on the roster. And that's an uncomfortable amount when the defense is a safety-driven defense. So on the roster right now, you got Caleb Downs, Lathan Ransom, Malik Hartford, Jalen McClain, Jaden Bonsu, and Leroy Roker. There's a couple of guys out there that the Bucs are talking to in the portal. Cameron Broussard, 6'1", 180. He's from Sacramento State, 2-time FCS All-American. Last year he had 73 tackles, 2 picks, and 5 pass breakups. I couldn't find anything on him from Sacramento State, but I did find his high school stuff. I feel like he definitely could have gone somewhere higher than Sacramento State for whatever that's worth. But Uncle Chip is going to see him in California. Another potential option is Jaden Magnum from Michigan State. And both of these guys are also visiting Michigan as they need some safety help as well. But, these are depth guys. Like the unnamed SEC director, player personnel said that I quoted the other day, the spring window is nothing but trading backups here, which is kind of a rude way to put it. But that's kind of what's going on here. We're losing backups. We're adding backups because that's the caliber of player that is in this portal window right here. So that's just what it is. Coach Locke went down to Alabama to make a couple offers, maybe visit some family. Who knows? I absolutely loved the hiring of Carlos Locklyn, and he's really showing out in his first cycle here. And it's really looking like Coach Locke just may come in and sign the top 2 guys that were on the Buckeyes board when he got here. That's incredibly impressive. Now, granted, Bo Jackson and Jordan Davison, he had already known them and offered them when he was at Oregon. But he's just really impressive. To be able to come in and do that, I mean, it's just fantastic. He doesn't want to be known as a recruiter. He wants to be known as an excellent coach, and I love that about him. It's I could see how that would irritate somebody. Maybe you feel like the less than coach on the staff because people always say running back coach is the easiest position to coach. It's a recruiting position. So I can see how he'd be irritated by that. But, you can also be an excellent recruiter, and it certainly seems like he is. But if he walks into Ohio State and is able to land the top 2 guys on the board when he wasn't even here until a month ago, I think it's pretty incredible. And I was talking to my buddy Max Torres. So Max Torres, he writes for Ducks Digest, and I had him on the show before. And Ducks Digest is obviously an Oregon publication. Well, he has since switched jobs and started working for On3 as a West Coast recruiting analyst, and he's very in tune to Oregon, and he's excellent. But seeing that Oregon is now in so many battles with us, I think that's a great resource for us. But anyway, he gave me some good news last night, and he told me that Jordan Davison and Oregon, he does not believe is going to happen, which pretty much sounds like Jordan Davison is a Buckeye, and Bill Kurelic also put in a crystal ball for him. So that's fantastic. So this now opens us up to a potential for some future relationships at Mater Dei as well. Also, Chris Henry out there, and getting a potential pipeline to Mater Dei, who's a real factory, would be really nice, as we have not ever had any luck out there. Bo Jackson, he said his 3 official visits to Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia. Michigan was kind of calling him a must-get after losing Marquise Davis, and that's not going to happen for them, so that's pretty sad. But let's say Coach Locke ends up missing out on Bo Jackson or Jordan Davison. He's still been hustling, working on a backup plan, because that's what a good running back coach does, or any kind of coach. But Byron Lewis from American Heritage is coming in for a visit. That is a Tony Alford offer. He's a top 200 player, the 14th ranked back in the class, 5'11", 200. We've probably all watched him by now. He's sudden, unbelievable balance, gets knocked and slowed up and hits full speed like immediately. Not a very patient guy, kind of a reckless style of running, but he's pretty good. And the Buckeyes are in his final 4, but I feel like he's a long shot, as Miami and Florida State are in really big on him, and we don't, unless it's Heartline on the job, when it comes down to us with Florida State and Miami, it's usually pretty dicey. So I think he's a pretty long shot. Anthony Rogers, he's from Alabama, but he goes to IMG. He has been committed to Alabama since Coach Locke offered him just a little while ago, and I think that I think he's a really tough pull. I don't even think he's a possibility. The next tier would be Dierre Hill. And Dierre Hill, we watched his tape last week. He's a top 100 guy, a little bit of a different style than Bowen Jordan, a little smaller and shiftier. However, I got some bad news on him from Max Torres, as he told me last night that he is sure enough that he is going to Oregon, that he was about to put a crystal ball in for him. So Dierre Hill seemingly gone and off the board. And that's a big pickup for Oregon, as they get a top 100 overall back. They also got Derek Harmon today, that stud defensive tackle from Michigan State, and they just keep piling on. And we'll review their portal class next week. It's good. It's good. When we talk about the Buckeyes trying to buy a championship, you know, the theme there. And when we stack it up against that Oregon class, I don't think the Buckeyes class is going to be too far ahead of it, to be honest. So following those 2 guys up would be Shakai Mills-Knight, big nasty bruiser from Memphis, originally from Canada, moved down to go to high school in Memphis because he was playing football in Canada. But this dude's 6'2", 225 when he's in college, I'm sure. He might even be 230. We've watched him on here. He's nasty. He's a nasty bruiser. He's kind of slow, but, you know, you don't need to be everything. He's a beast, and he brings that physical style that we know Coach Locklyn is looking for. And Isaiah West. So Isaiah West is a guy that Locke just went and visited at Philadelphia St. Joe's, McCord and Marv's school. So this kid was committed to Kentucky, still is committed to Kentucky. And we see Marquise Davis commit to Kentucky. And 2 days later, Coach Locklyn goes and visits him. So I think there's some definite smoke here, though Locke has not offered him yet. But what's clear is he doesn't put his eggs in one basket. He's out there hustling. He's out there making sure he's making moves, lining things up, putting some pressure on the guys at the top. You know, we're Ohio State. We want you, but we're not going to sit and hold pat. He's building more relationships. He's just out there hustling. exactly what you should do, exactly what Tony Alford did not do as a running back coach. And it's not just good strategy what Locklyn's doing, but it's effort and it's grind. And to be a great recruiter, you need good strategy, great personal skills, and that grind is probably most important. And we haven't had that from running back coach in a while. So I absolutely love seeing it. And I think that my initial thought on Isaiah West was probably not so hot because, he's a lower ranked guy, 3-star kid, 500th ranked. And my thought was, all right, Marquise Davis is going to go to Kentucky. And now we're Ohio State going to go in and try and pull the other kid who's not nearly as good. Like, I didn't like the thought of that. Obviously, though, he's just kind of putting this guy in as a backup plan. But then I watched the kid. He's really good, incredibly underranked, and I got a little something on him here. Now, I cherry-picked some of the runs here, but I just wanted to kind of show you guys some of the physical ones because this is why Locke loves him. It's for sure, he's really physical. He's just constantly mixing it up. So this guy's 5'11", 210. And he's at St. Joe's in Philly, and they play a pretty strong schedule. Yeah, just trucking dudes. Love him. And my buddy Dan sent me this picture today. Take a look at this dude. I mean, geez, oh man, look at that quad. So that's Isaiah West. Again, a backup plan, but he's lining them up. And Isaiah West is going to come to Columbus for a visit. Also on the board right now is Jeff Overton. He's still being mentioned, and this one puzzles me. I think that he is a borderline take. And just to be straight up, I don't like borderline takes from out of state at running back. It's always uncomfortable to call someone a borderline take because we're talking about high school players here and it sounds rude and I don't like it. But there are levels of football, D3, FCS, FBS, P4, and then there's Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia. And not everybody is, fits at every level. And I think that's a borderline take in Jeff Overton. There's plenty of players who aren't Ohio State caliber who make it onto an Ohio State roster. We've seen some of them leave in the portal. And, most of them, in some cases, were borderline takes. And I just like borderline takes to be from Ohio, particularly at running back, where there's usually always one. And there is one in this class in Kentrell Reinhardt from Columbus who does not have an offer. And he would also be considered a borderline take, but he's 3 inches taller, 20 pounds heavier, as fast, and 450 spots ranked better than Jeff Overton. So it's really puzzling to me. I don't really understand it. But he doesn't have an offer, and Jeff Overton does, and Jeff Overton is still on the board. So a little bit puzzling to me. I just think there's some positions that you can always find a borderline guy that's as good in Ohio. And even if that guy isn't panning out, you still have that Ohio influence. He's still bringing you that Ohio culture. It's important for the rivalry. It's important for these guys to know it. It's important when you're trying to teach it to out-of-state kids to have a lot of in-state guys that know it. And that's just my thoughts on it. Don't mean to disparage that young man at all. I just would much rather go with the Ohio one when we're talking about guys who are kind of in the same caliber, who are kind of takes. And that's just all I mean by that. But Coach Locke also offered JaMychal Jones, who is a class of 2026 back out of Alabama. I watched him. He's okay. But then he offered a 2027 kid, really young kid, in Xavier Crowell. And I think this guy is going to be a top 5 back in the class. Really, really phenomenal. So he's getting in there early for him. Chip went to North Carolina and offered Faison Brandon. Faison Brandon is 24/7, their own internal rank, number 1 overall. And the dude is legit. 6'4", 185. He is a massive kid. And when I watched him, this kid he looks like Vince Young when he runs. He's only 15 and he's that size. and he's got a thick neck. I mean, the dude's legit. Really, really high-rated quarterback, and he's fantastic. He attended spring practice last year, and he's probably going to get on campus this summer. So he's got offers from all the bigs already. And I think we can go ahead and add him along with Dierre Hill from Heritage as Chip's two favorite quarterbacks in this class, and I love them both. Dierre told me that Coach Kelly is coming down to see him soon, and he's excited as heck to see him. Dierre is an out-of-state kid, kind of like James Peoples, who legitimately grew up a Buckeyes fan, no joke. He shared this photo with me, which I wanted to share with you guys. So that's him at the stadium, right in between Tyvus and Dolo Dale when he's a kid in the red shirt. So Dierre is a bona fide Buckeye fan. That is from 2014 when his dad, Rajabel, was working for the Cavaliers. So we can officially say that Dierre is a Buckeyes fan and an Ohioan. So we're claiming another 5-star, and that's fantastic. Another 5-star out of the Buckeye State, Dierre Hill. And Chip's going to see him. Dierre's going to join us on the show and tell us how that visit went after he talks to Chip and about his lifelong Buckeye fandom. So I can't wait for that one. But this dude wants to be a Buckeye. That's clear. 5-star, number 3 quarterback in the class. And he's legit. He is really legit. And these guys are young, big kids, man. But Justin Fry went down and offered J.P. Pierre out of North Carolina, 6'5", 305. He's a top 50 overall in the class of 2026. So he's trying to get in early on these guys. And that's good, getting it rolling. He's not as early as Georgia or Penn State or Miami, who all offered him last June. I'm nitpicking here. Or Bama or Tennessee or Auburn or Texas A&M, who offered in February. But, you know, he's trying. One thing that I've noticed that is a little bit maybe under discussed is when we get these big-time players out of the South, we get in early. If we look at a guy like Caden McDonald, we got in on him before LSU, Alabama, Auburn, Texas, Florida, Clemson. Kenyatta got in on him before LSU, Bama, Georgia, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, FSU, Tennessee. When we get in early, we got a shot to get that, you know, plant the seed that they can come out of the South. They can come up to Ohio State, get everything they want and more before they get entrenched down there. And I really believe that. All except for Aaron Noland. And when I was kind of doing some research on this, it just blows my mind. So Air had all these offers. Ryan Day comes calling, offers him at Ohio State. That was it. Boom, lickety split, done. And I love this dude for that. Ohio State was one of the last schools to offer him. He said, yes, that's where I want to be. Committed almost immediately. A second quarterback comes, transfers in on his class. He keeps a positive attitude. Julian Sand gets all this hype. He's obviously incredibly talented and more advanced at this point than Air, and Air probably knows it. I don't think that I would have handled it anywhere near as well. He's like a grown man, and you know it doesn't mean Air can't catch him. I'm not selling him short at all. I mean, I think he's fantastic, and the maturity is just off the charts. The way he always wanted to be a Buckeye, it seems, and just really was like, yes, I'm all about it. Doesn't want to leave. The way he chose us, like I don't forget things like that about players when I root for him, and I think he's really awesome. But I got a little clip of him. So him and Julian were both back home and kind of screwing around in the backyard doing some off-platform stuff. So here's Air, and some people were talking about his throwing motion here, thinking that that's actually how he throws the ball. I mean, these guys are obviously just goofing around in the backyard. But look at his foot there, the way he comes off the ground. It's pretty funny. And Julian was really getting down with some goofy stuff. He's really impressive. There's this one off platform here that's just like, not that one. I love that one right there. That one is slick. Look at that little flick. I mean, he's so good. He is so good. Keenan Bailey was successful in landing Nate Roberts, tight end out of Oklahoma. That was his number one guy on the board. And he landed his number one. That's awesome. I love it. But he was pretty singularly focused on him, and he wants 2 tight ends in the class. His second-ranked guy and third-ranked guy, we were thinking was Luka Gilbert, who was the number 1 tight end in Ohio. He committed to Miami. And the other highest tight end was from Indiana, Brock Schott. He committed to Miami. So now he's kind of dropped down because he wants a second one in the class to more developmental guys, and he went to see a couple. So Wednesday, he went to see Brody Lennon, and he's at Gates Mills in, Jesus, I always forget the name of this place, man. Gilmore Academy. Okay, so he goes to see Brody Lennon in Cleveland at Gilmore Academy. We talked about Brody before. I think we watched him a little bit. 6'3", 220. He's a nasty football player, but he's got a lot of weight to gain, kind of a project. He doesn't have an offer yet. And then he went down to St. Xavier in Cincinnati and saw Gordy Solstead. Gordy Solstead is a defensive lineman, and he doesn't have an offer yet either. They want him to camp, but this kid doesn't want to wait till camp to decide where he wants to go to school. He wants to decide. He's got some Ivy League offers, so really smart kid. And he's got a Wisconsin offer too. I wouldn't be stunned if he ended up in Wisconsin before he ever made it to that camp. But we'll see. Anyway, we're talking about Ohio borderline guys here, different than Virginia borderline guys here. So I'm all for it. And, we know we need some tight end depth, and we're going to talk about the tight ends on the weekend show. The tight ends have been the discussion of the week around town. And, I think we're going to talk about it together. I got some more thoughts on the tight end. But Keenan Bailey is new, but he's been recruiting for several cycles now. And the way he landed Nate Roberts was awesome. But I feel like he went so all in and so singularly focused that he's kind of in a spot here on his second guy where he's fallen way down the board here. And Nate Roberts, while I think he's firmly entrenched, it still has the potential, right, to be kind of sketchy. He lives 15 minutes from Norman, Oklahoma, and his brother plays there. I do think he's all the way in, but it is a little scary. James Laurinaitus went down with Keenan Bailey to St. Xavier, and he offered a linebacker, Jacoby Clapper, 6'2", 200, 4-star, 225 overall. There he is right there. Good-looking linebacker. Really good-looking linebacker. Definitely advanced for his age. Sincere Johnson, the best linebacker in the class, in the state in that class, has not been offered yet. That's Sincere. He's out of Glenville and Cleveland. His team is going to be heading down to Columbus to camp soon, and I expect he'll get an offer then, if not sooner. But he's the real deal, too. Not sure if he's going to outgrow linebacker by the time he's done in Cleveland. He's really big. But awesome young man. Really good dude. Really good player. Good friends with Darvell Reese. So the 24/7 composite, I was taking a look here, and it has an insane 7 out of 30 5-stars are from Georgia in the class of 2025. 7. And only 1 is currently committed to Georgia. 3 to USC, 1 to Bama, 2 undeclared. Can you imagine if we had 7 5-stars in Ohio and only 1 of them was committed to us? 4 somewhere else? I mean, I'd be rioting. I would be absolutely rioting. I can't even believe that. I was watching a Buckeye show talking about this tight end. So I don't know how, but this just kind of, it does. Sometimes it makes me wonder if sometimes these guys who are close to the program get a piece of information from the program, and then that kind of influences the topic that they talk about. But I've just heard about tight ends all of a sudden, nonstop everywhere. But anyway, I was watching another show, and they were discussing moving the spring window. Would it be a good idea or not? Moving the when they start camp and when it ends. When the spring practice game, when the spring game ends, should it end right at the very end of camp? Should it end a little earlier? But one guy contended that if you moved it so that it wrapped up right at the end of the portal, then it feels like you're trying to, quote, trap or trick players into staying. This statement really bothered me, man. I think it's such a backwards way to think about this. And I'm just very confused. Again, when did it become the standard that a coach is supposed to operate his schedule for his football team based on being fair to people who are considering leaving? Like, that's not the standard. The standard is you stay. You certainly don't change your operation around that. It's absurd. It's an absurd way of thinking. This, by the way, the same guy who was pressing Ryan Day to make a decision on the starting quarterback at the end of spring with respect to the loser being able to transfer. And again, a coach does not owe decisions or scheduling with respect to players who want to leave the program. If you want to leave, the rules are such now that you can leave twice a year. Don't need a good reason. Get up and go. Everything is now structured towards the player. The coaches can't even plan their rosters. And to think that they're supposed to now somehow change how they operate, it's insane to me. Absolutely insane. Every time I hear it, I just feel like I got to push back on it because the pendulum has swung so far now over to the players that we had a whole lot of guys who left after the season and went in the portal, went somewhere, got on somebody's roster. Coaches think, all right, we got this spot filled. So they quit looking. And then that guy gets up and goes again in the spring somewhere else. It's just asinine. And to add on top of that, now somehow coaches are supposed to be expected to worry or change how they do things, how they would normally operate to accommodate somebody who wants to leave. I think it's insane, man. I think it's insane. But, it doesn't shock me from who it came out of. We'll just leave it at that. That's all I got, guys. What do we got here? Hey, what? Dude, stop it. Man, you're unbelievable. Thank you, Devin. Oh, my gosh. I'm blushing here. Can you see me? That's unbelievable. Thank you, buddy. Jeez. That's fantastic. Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate that, buddy. No Boy Scout helmet. No, sir. No, sir. Go Bucks. Thank you, buds. That was awesome, man. That's awesome. You guys are the best, man. Let's see. The Ohio podcast. Screw that. We want an angry Ryan Day. Absolutely. Hey, there's Doreen. Doreen, congratulations on your wrench. Juck is redder than the Bucks. I am. My face is red. Devin made my face red. Devin says, who votes we fire Fry? Oh, my goodness. Oh. I almost feel like a jerk, man. So I feel like I go in on this guy every day, but honestly, it's something new every day that I'm just like, it's something new and I'm scratching my head. Like, late to offers, too few offers. I found out that was a philosophy that he was actually like intentionally not offering as many people. And it just blows my mind, man. It's always something. My man Dago, well, hopefully we can get all these guys on the field during the season and get some meaningful snaps because CJ only played like one snap in 2020 and McCord didn't get many in 22. Isn't that so true? Honestly, we all know this, but this has just been an absolute. I think the stat was Georgia's freshmen played twice as many snaps last year as Ohio State's. Twice as many. We're talking about the same caliber of player, the same type of program. You would think that those would kind of line up pretty close. And that's not even to Dago's point. Dago's talking about guys who are, almost ready, guys who are like the next man up. And they do a really poor job with that. My hope is that they are sincere in what they're talking about this year with trying to play the depth. But, I'll believe it when I see it. I think that they're going to start off the season like that But, we all know old habits die hard. Sometimes it's tough to break a habit. And, when things get close and it seems to them like they feel like they got to be up by 28 to feel comfortable playing any depth. But we'll see. I would sure love to see that change. I think we all would. I want to see the young guys. I want to see them get experience. Sean says there's a tight end committed to Cincy, but I hear OSU's trying to flip him. I'm not familiar with this guy. Anybody know who Sean's talking about? Doreen, Aaron Nolan stayed. The whole team stayed. The whole room stayed. Yes, they did, man. That was really impressive. Really impressive display. I never thought Air would leave. I was thinking, Air would have no reason to leave just yet. The only reason he was going to leave would be if he was angry. And some people said he was. I didn't really get that vibe at all. Obviously, Julian wouldn't leave. But Lincoln, he's still young. He's still developing, and I think he knows it. So I definitely thought that there was a chance Devin might go back on his burn the boats and really kind of, he's an impressive guy. He really is. I'm certain he had opportunities to go places. I'm certain he was approached, probably got some nice offers thrown his way, potentially some starting jobs, hinted at. And this guy just keeps sticking around and fighting. He's a great Buckeye. He really is. Oh, Devin, this is a great point. Devin says, I really wish the wind wasn't so bad for the spring game. That really screwed up any chance we had at getting any decent kind of knowledge in that game. It feels like nothing we saw I can really put any credence into. Even Will's deep balls. Will threw some longer balls further down the field, which he struggles with. We know that. And you can't really take anything from it because it was so windy. I didn't even realize how windy it was during the game until afterwards when Tim May was on the field doing his little piece. I couldn't even hear him in his microphone because it was so loud. Papers were whipping around behind him. I was like, oh, well, that just changed my entire perspective on how that game was. Ohio Podcast says, I want Bo Jackson so bad just so I can say Bo knows every time he does something for the Buckeyes. It's true, man. It's great. It's a great name. We have a couple great names. I think Aaron Nolan is a great name. Bo Jackson, obviously a great name. And Bo knows for guys our age, that's, every time we hear something, Bo, we say that, right? Yes, Dago, did you see that? Yes, he did. He said, did he throw that off the wrong foot? Here, I'll play that again. That's a pretty cool one. Where is that sucker? Oh, shoot. Yeah, so people were – this was playing on Twitter, and people were looking at it like, wow, that's the worst throwing motion I've ever seen. Look at that form. Like, guys, he's having fun throwing off platform, goofing around, man. But, this is what they do now, Mahomes has got them all doing this stuff. It's pretty fun to watch. Caleb Williams has that one down really good, the one that he just did right there. That's pretty impressive. But, yeah, they're all doing this, messing around with that stuff now. Jeremy says, can someone please tell Steve Hellwagon how to pronounce Kane Holes and Egbuka? Man, listen. My man, that dude is he's an entertaining guy to listen to. when he gets mad, he gets so red-assed. It's great. But hey, I'll admit, I'm not great with pronunciations of names, and I've butchered both of those ones, to be honest, myself. Danny Savage, draft guru. Bo never hurts his hip. Might have been the best ever. Not beyond the realm of possibility. I mean, he insane talent. The speed for his size. I mean, it's got to be like, I don't know, who else? Who else is that fast at that size? It's just, I don't think anybody. I don't think we've ever seen a football player that big that could move like that. Just incredibly impressive. And he was even a good baseball player too. It's amazing. Amazing athlete. Imagine if he was a big mouth. That's the funniest thing, man. How loud Dion is and how quiet Bo is, those two sport athletes. Bo is like silent. Dago said Devin and oh, Sean, thank you, buddy. Devin impressed me with his interview calling out the beat to their faces. I like that type of stuff. Listen, I did a show that day. I was so fired up from that when he was asked that question, as if like, hey, you're second string. What are you still doing here? I mean, the way he looked at him right in his eyes, and man, it was cold. It was cold. And I just love the guy. I really do. I really do. I think he is such a great leader. I think they would rally around him so hard. And honestly, I mean, it's not beyond the realm of possibility that we see both of these quarterbacks play quite a bit this year. It really isn't. Thank you, Mello. Fire fry, fire fry. My new chant. Poor guy. I was thinking about this. It kind of feels to me like there is a circle of trust on this team in the coaching staff. And it kind of goes Chip, Brian, Fry. There's just a little circle there. I don't know. I could be wrong, but it seems to me like Fry's going to have a long leash. Though I was talking to a couple of you guys, and someone made a good point that Ryan's just not putting up with anybody's feelings anymore. He's all about, we're gonna win, and if you're not putting up results like Perry Eliano, you're out. But then you can also kind of look at Fry and say, well, I mean, he did get Carter Lowe, so obviously you can look at that like I do, that Carter Lowe was going to Ohio State or Michigan regardless, and Michigan's a dumpster fire, so that wasn't really saying much. However, he still gets the win for it. But he's got to do more. Like, something's got to happen in this class here. I don't know what's going on. The one guy I pulled up the other day, really good looking kid that's been Jake Cook, that's been surging, good looking Ohio kid, does not have an offer yet, but we're offering 3-star guys out of state who aren't as good. I don't know, man. I don't understand the guy's philosophy. My hope is that he changes it next cycle when he sees that it's not worked out well for him. The 98 loss was probably the worst ever. That hurt worse than any loss under Urban or Tressel. Oh, thank you, Sean. Thanks for the 5, buddy. That, man, let me tell you something about that one. I was, my dad owned a wedding reception hall, and I had to wash dishes that day. I argued. I didn't want to go, and he made me go in and wash the dishes at the reception hall. And I was washing the dishes and listening to the radio. And as it turns out, I was happy that I didn't get to stay home and watch the game, and that I listened to it on the radio. But wow, that was a team I loved, man. I loved that team. Really, really loved that team. That was awful. I was a senior in high school. So this is true. Steely Matt says Bo supposedly ran a 4.240. This is this is everything I've ever heard. That's a true story. Absolutely freak. Just total freak. This was embarrassing. When Bo trucked Bosworth, oh man, that was embarrassing. That game, I mean, it was pitched, Bo versus Boz, like it was a big time deal. And then that you got that head to head in that game, a very rare thing. That was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. And I was a big Bo fan, so I didn't mind. I did not like Bosworth and his goofy hair, thinking he was cool because of that. Hell yeah, he did. I love when he ran up that wall. Dude, Herschel Walker, oh, unbelievably impressive. Do you remember when he was fighting MMA at like 50? Guy's crazy. Danny says he trucked Boz and then beat him on the outside. He sure did. Dago says, I read Bo's autobiography as a kid. He was a hardcore, bro. Was fishing and took a 3-prong hook in the head and yanked it. Amazing. This is great. You drink it. I just broke up with the broad, went to dump her and got more pissed off in 98. Love it. Yeah. Steely Matt says he was at least 235 also. He sure was, man. He was a unit. Absolute unit. Thanks, Dev. Doreen, thanks for coming. Thanks for coming tonight. Doreen, I love that picture your daughter got in the tunnel. That was really awesome.